The story begins with a corpse lying on the ground, blood spreading across the stone beneath it. The area is silent, carrying the aftermath of violence. Soon after, a group of soldiers arrives at the scene. They move cautiously, advancing toward a temple located along a path that runs between two towering mountains. As they climb the stone steps leading upward, the destruction becomes increasingly apparent. Upon reaching the temple grounds, the devastation is undeniable. The buildings are ruined, and bodies are scattered across the area. One elderly monk among the group struggles to accept what he is seeing. The Manhwa sect, once known for its discipline and strength, has been reduced to a place of death. Another member of the group reacts with visible anger, convinced that only an inhuman force could have caused such destruction. Before any conclusion can be reached, attention shifts forward. Suddenly, movement appears among the corpses. From the rear of the battlefield, a single figure begins to walk forward. As he draws closer, his blood-soaked and heavily wounded face becomes visible, stunning the gathered leaders. They recognize him as the Plum Blossom Sword Saint. Without pause, a vast wave of red energy surges outward from him. The attack overwhelms the front lines instantly, crushing warriors and tearing through the battlefield without resistance. As the chaos spreads, a terrifying red aura rises, revealing the true origin of the massacre. From within the darkness, a hand emerges holding the severed head of Manhwa's leader. The representatives of the sects are left unable to react. A young warrior then steps fully into view, openly provoking the massive gathering. He reveals that his presence was driven by Manhwa's reputation as the strongest sect. Through effortless violence, he proves that reputation false. He throws the fallen leader's head toward the crowd, challenging them to attack together. Consumed by anger and humiliation, the remaining masters unleash a combined assault. Facing them, the warrior calmly accepts the challenge, finding the confrontation finally worth his attention. As the scene transitions smoothly, the perspective shifts to the real world. Dong Bong-soo is revealed sitting in his room, playing a newly released virtual reality game. Inside the game, he controls the sword master seen earlier, fighting countless enemies simultaneously. Even he finds it difficult to believe how many opponents he managed to defeat at once. It becomes clear that the entire massacre was part of the game's content. The game is notorious for its extreme violence, featuring relentless bloodshed and highly realistic depictions of injury and dismemberment. These elements make it especially appealing to Bong-soo. He recalls that the game has already drawn massive backlash and protest emails demanding its shutdown. Despite this, he believes there is nothing else quite like it. Still, he decides that in his next session, he might try playing more calmly. As the atmosphere settles, a television broadcast in his room switches to breaking news. The report announces that the CEO of Dado Industries, No, has gone missing. Bong-soo casually assumes that the man may already be dead and continues watching without concern. Moments later, strange noises echo from outside his room. Sensing something unusual, Bong-soo turns to investigate. Realizing what the sound suggests, he picks up a hammerstick kept nearby and moves into the adjacent room. Inside, a man is revealed, bound tightly and trembling in fear. The man is none other than CEO No, whom Bong-soo has secretly kidnapped and restrained. Bong-soo sets the hammerstick down and sits across from the restrained man, silently observing him. After a brief moment of thought, he moves closer and forces No to raise his head, demanding justification for his survival. Overcome by fear, No insists he has done nothing wrong and claims complete ignorance as to why he was captured. When Bong-soo releases him, No begins coughing violently. The scene shifts to fragments of No's past. He is shown abusing young women without cause, subjecting them to torture and brutal violence. Despite these actions, he continues to deny wrongdoing, repeatedly expressing confusion over his situation. Returning to the present, Bong-soo brings the hammerstick into view and makes it clear that someone truly innocent would never become the target of this kind of hunt. Panicking, No claims he will atone on his own and begs Bong-soo not to interfere. In response, Bong-soo violently pulls him forward by the hair and asserts that the punishment for No's actions must be delivered directly. He raises the hammer, preparing to strike. At that moment, No suddenly attacks, slamming his head into Bong-soo's stomach. The impact disrupts the strike and forces Bong-soo backward. In the same instant, a hidden power awakens within No, allowing him to snap the restraints binding his hands. Freed, he is overtaken by a twisted sense of joy and focuses solely on killing Bong-soo. He grabs the fallen hammer and advances with clear intent. Bong-soo reacts with brief surprise before calmly smiling. He avoids the incoming attack effortlessly and counters with a single punch to No's stomach. The blow overwhelms him completely. As No attempts to stand, Bong-soo delivers a precise kick to his leg, sending him crashing to the floor in far worse condition than before. Desperate, No crawls across the floor and notices a glowing gate ahead. Believing it to be an escape, he drags himself toward it and slips inside. However, once within the room, he senses another presence. When he turns around, he finds himself surrounded by countless corpses staring directly at him. The sight leaves him frozen in terror. Bong-soo enters the room behind him and explains, without emotion, that most humans live as harmless beings, while a small number prey upon others. Among these predators exists a hunter who takes responsibility for eliminating them. As he speaks, Bong-soo's eyes glow red, and his intent becomes clear. He steps forward, resolved to end No's life. Terrified, No attempts to resist, shielding himself while hurling desperate curses. Before Bong-soo can proceed, the door to the room is violently forced open. Police officers storm inside, surrounding Bong-soo with weapons drawn. The commanding officer moves forward and begins arresting him on charges including kidnapping, confinement, and murder. Bong-soo reacts with disbelief, questioning how his location was discovered. The officers respond aggressively, firing a warning shot and making it clear that their weapons are real. Bong-soo observes the impact point of the bullet before slowly looking back at them. The situation reminds him strongly of the virtual game he was just playing. Suddenly, he begins to laugh, confusing the officers. He then reveals the full extent of CEO No's crimes, exposing the murder of 6 women, the torture they endured, and the photographs taken before their deaths. The police are visibly shaken, while No begins to panic as his past is laid bare. Bong-soo gestures toward the corpses in the room, explaining that these lives were taken by No's own hands. He describes people like No as predators who exploit and destroy the innocent. He makes it clear that his actions were part of hunting such individuals. Finally, he points toward No and states that the one deserving punishment today is not himself, but the man standing before them. Hearing Bong-soo's words, CEO No falls into complete terror. One of the police officers, holding a gun while casually lighting a cigarette, makes it clear through his attitude that the only person he sees in front of him is a kidnapper and a murderer. This response ignites a surge of anger inside Bong-soo. He lifts his hammer, realizing that any attempt to make the authorities understand has failed. In that moment, he accepts that explanation has no meaning here. Acting on that realization, he swings the hammer down toward CEO No. The police respond instantly, opening fire as the strike lands. As the hammer connects with CEO No's face, bullets are fired at the same time. Bong-soo catches sight of one bullet rushing toward him. In his final conscious thought, he reflects that if he had been given even one more chance, he would have continued hunting and punishing such creatures without hesitation. Just like in the brutal virtual game, he longs for a place where judgment can be carried out freely and without restraint. The bullet strikes him, and his consciousness begins to fade. Memories flash rapidly through his mind before everything goes dark. After an unknown amount of time, Bong-soo's eyes snap open, and a scream escapes his throat. Regaining awareness, he is unable to comprehend why he is still alive. He clearly remembers being shot. A man stands in front of him, equally shocked, having believed Bong-soo to be dead. As Bong-soo tries to understand his surroundings, the man becomes furious at the sight of him breathing. He grabs Bong-soo by the collar and strikes him, clearly irritated by the effort it took to drag him here from market. After shoving him into a room, the man leaves, showing no further interest, as if his involvement is finished. Rage boils inside Bong-soo. A stone lies near his hand, and he reaches for it, attempting to stand and pursue the man. The stone slips from his grasp. His body betrays him. Violent coughing overtakes him, and his limbs feel impossibly weak. Walking becomes difficult, nearly impossible. Confused, he opens his clothes to examine himself. What he sees confirms something is terribly wrong. This is not his original body. The frame is emaciated, bones protruding beneath skin that shows no sign of strength. Scars cover his body, each one a record of pain and abuse. He looks outside. The moon hangs in the sky, and beyond it stretches a vast empire. As he studies the surroundings more carefully, recognition begins to form. This place resembles the Murim world he knows from games and stories. The realization slowly settles in, and his confusion turns into overwhelming emotion. Anxiety gives way to excitement. Tears stream down his face as laughter escapes him uncontrollably. His wish has been fulfilled, not through survival, but through death and rebirth. His consciousness has arrived in a world governed by strength. When his emotions finally stabilize, his expression twists into an unsettling smile. The scene shifts. Inside a stable, a boy named Sosam works mechanically, cleaning horse stalls. His hands move without thought, his body already accustomed to the filth and stench. The work is interrupted when a servant appears, visibly bothered by the smell. Without concern for the boy's condition, the servant signals that another task awaits. Sosam hesitates, knowing his current work is unfinished. The hesitation is met with violence. He is reminded of his place within the household. As an orphan surviving only on scraps from the Dan family, he has no right to question orders. Resistance is pointless. He is dragged to a blacksmith's workshop filled with rusted weapons and broken blades. An elderly blacksmith waits inside, along with a large, intimidating figure. The blacksmith surveys the workshop with fatigue. Only 2 people have arrived, and the pile of weapons makes the task difficult. Dongo dismisses the concern and treats Sam as labor, striking him hard and knocking him to the ground. Without waiting, Dongo leaves, abandoning him with the work. The blacksmith watches in silence, unable to interfere. Sam forces an oversized bundle of weapons onto his back. The sack is unstable, blades pressing through the fabric. He stumbles under the weight and collapses. The load falls beside him, leaving him motionless from exhaustion. The blacksmith approaches and notes his condition. Sam insists on continuing, but as he turns away, memories knot his own surface. Cold, loss, and prolonged suffering flood his thoughts. His strength fails again, and he collapses. Dongo returns and strikes him without hesitation. The kick sends Sam across the ground. Fragmented memories surface repeatedly, surviving a storm alone, begging at the Danri clan's gate, enduring constant abuse. His consciousness fades as the cold deepens. In the darkness, something changes. Later, Sam awakens in the stable, leaning against a wall. His body is weak, but his awareness is clear. Seeing his reflection in a water trough, recognition settles in. The name returns. Sam. The conclusion forms naturally. The original owner of the body died from the beating, and another consciousness has taken over. He stands alone in the dim stable, confirming the surroundings from memory. As the realization settles, a glowing blue interface appears before him. It matches the Murim online status window. Time passes. During the day, Mel moves through the clan grounds carrying feed, irritated by recent events. Frustration builds, and violent thoughts briefly surface before being dismissed as too risky. He heads to the stable instead. Inside, Sam sits slumped against the wall, bruised and bloodied beside a dropped food bowl. His eyes remain partially open, watching. 2 weeks have passed since awakening in this world. During that time, understanding has formed. The people speak Chinese, but this is not China. The land resembles ancient Asia, yet martial artists here move beyond normal human limits. They leap, train, and fight openly. Martial arts are real in this world. The system confirms it. The Murim online status window functions normally and is visible only to him. This is not a game. The people here are real, each with their own emotions and lives. He considers the question of what he is now. For the moment, the answer is unnecessary. Dongo appears at the doorway and approaches Sam. Sam slowly turns his head to face him. Dongo pauses, surprised by the lack of reaction. Sam calmly lifts his food bowl and drinks from it without acknowledging him. Dongo becomes irritated and attacks. Sam reacts instantly, catching the strike and crushing Dongo's fist. The change is immediate. So Sam continues the assault without hesitation. The confined room fills with violence until Dongo collapses and stops moving. So Sam stands amid the bloodstains and looks at his hands, noting the heat running through his body. The question of identity surfaces briefly and is dismissed. This world is real and follows a clear rule: survival through strength. There is no need to hide here. He sits down and turns his attention to the body. He activates the inventory. A blue space appears, different from the structured layout he remembers. It is a single open space. He reaches into it and confirms its size, then places his hand on the corpse. The body distorts and disappears, leaving only blood behind. He considers the usefulness of this ability and the possibility of further testing. The scene shifts forward. Daylight fills a large Murim-style compound. In a courtyard, two men talk, while So Sam sweeps nearby. He wears a simple mask and continues his work quietly. Their expressions show mockery as they notice him. When he pauses, one of them moves forward and strikes him. So Sam does not resist. He lowers his gaze, resumes his vacant behavior, and continues sweeping. The role remains intact. Matchel shoves Dong Bong Su forward and directs him toward the stable, then forces his head down against a post. Dong Bong Su maintains his weak act and offers no resistance. Matchel vents his frustration briefly, then leaves him to obey the order. Dong Bong Su leads the horse through the busy village streets, maintaining his frail appearance. The market is crowded, and the setting turns the task into a public display. As he walks, he notices children hiding nearby, waiting. They ambush him, throwing a stone that strikes his head. Blood runs down his temple, but he continues walking without reacting. The children laugh and follow, mocking him and throwing more stones. For a brief moment, his silhouette darkens and his presence shifts. The children freeze in fear. One of them breaks down, unsure of what he saw. The moment passes. Dong Bong Su resumes his harmless behavior, pats the horse, and walks on. The children recover and continue mocking him, though with less confidence. He endures it all without response, his steps steady. Back at the armory, Matchel complains to himself while cleaning, irritated by extra work and Dongo's absence. As he wonders where Dongo has gone, the armory door opens and Dong Bong Su steps out. Matchel looks inside and finds every weapon cleaned, polished, and neatly arranged. He is stunned. Dong Bong Su nods, maintaining his foolish expression. Matchel misinterprets the change as obedience. Dong Bong Su offers a small, heavy pouch. Matchel opens it and finds it filled with coins taken from Dongo's body. His confusion turns to satisfaction. Believing the money to be a tribute, he accepts it and leaves in high spirits. Dong Bong Su watches until he is gone. The harmless expression fades, and his gaze turns cold. As dusk falls, Matchel heads into town, pleased with his gain and unaware of the situation. He admires the weight of the pouch and decides how to spend it. He arrives at a high-class brothel and presents the money confidently. The owner recognizes him and hesitates briefly at the request, then accepts the payment and directs him upstairs. Matchel enters a private room, pours himself a drink, and waits. A voice announces itself from outside the door. A woman enters the room. Matchel's attention fixes on her immediately. Her appearance exceeds what he expected, and he gestures for her to come closer. She kneels beside the table and begins serving him. Matchel relaxes, fully distracted. The perspective shifts to a narrow crack in the wall. A single eye observes from the darkness, unmoving. Earlier, Matchel had climbed the steps of the Bungyang Inn and been directed to a room on the second floor. Downstairs, the owner examines the pouch of money Matchel left behind. Brief hesitation gives way to greed. Another figure enters. Dong Bong Su appears in the guise of the frail stable boy. The owner recognizes him and reacts with irritation, but stops when Dong Bong Su presents another heavy pouch. The owner accepts it immediately and directs him to a nearby room on the same floor. Dong Bong Su ascends the stairs calmly. Then owner watches him go, satisfied. Back in Matchel's room, Matchel is now stripped to the waist, his hands bound with cloth. He remains unaware of the danger. A presence moves behind him. A cloth tightens around his neck. Resistance follows briefly, then weakens. The struggle ends with a sharp motion. The body collapses. Dong Bong Su lifts the body and drops it to the floor. He watches until all movement stops. He sits beside the corpse for a moment, then begins clearing the room. His actions are controlled and methodical. He approaches the wall, separating the rooms, and locates the narrow crack used earlier. Turning back, he activates his ability. The body vanishes in a flash of blue light. He remains seated and examines the result. A familiar interface appears. The experience bar has increased slightly. The conclusion is clear. Killing grants experience, and accumulation leads to growth. He leans back, considering the implications. Strength increases through repetition. Efficiency follows power. Dong Bong Su lowers his hand and looks at the empty space where the body once lay, already focused on what comes next. Dong Bong Su briefly covers his face with his arms, then props Matchell's severed head into a small opening in the wall, leaving it displayed. The task finished, he moves away. Outside in the hallway, the owner waits impatiently. An entertainer named Inying approaches the room Dong Bong Su had rented and listens at the door before calling out. The owner grows irritated by the delay and orders her inside. She opens the door and steps into the dark room. The owner remains in the hall, growing uneasy as silence settles over the second floor. He glances toward Matchell's room and knocks, receiving no response. As irritation turns into suspicion, a scream erupts from the other room. He rushes inside and finds a body hanging from the ceiling. In the dim light and confusion, he fails to recognize Guok Dongo and instead calls out Matchell's name. The scene shifts to Anhui. The Huai River in the north and the Yangtze River in the center create a fertile plain where trade flourishes. Along with prosperity come bandits and unorthodox factions. In response, clans and sects rise to enforce order. Among them are the Namong clan and the Danri clan. Though smaller, the Danri clan maintains the Cross Heaven Sword Division and the Black Crow Squad, whose intelligence network surpasses even the beggar sect within Anhui. Recently, the Black Crow Squad has been dealing with a troubling case. Inside their headquarters, a subordinate presents a report to the squad leader, Gyo. Over the past few months, nearly 100 apparent suicides have occurred, far exceeding normal patterns. Every case appears flawless, leaving no trace of foul play. The perfection itself raises suspicion. Gyo asks for the first recorded case and learns it involved Matchell, an armory artisan of the Danri clan. The death occurred at an inn known as the Phoenix Tavern. Gyo decides to investigate personally. At the tavern, Gyo examines the room where Matchell was found hanging. He inspects the floor, walls, and ceiling. There is no sign of forced entry. The wooden wall shows no signs of removal, and the ceiling beams are fixed in place. No one could have entered unnoticed. The conclusion remains uncertain. Gyo asks whether anyone stayed in the adjacent room. The answer confirms another guest arrived around the same time. The name given is Sawsum of the Danri clan. The scene shifts to Dong Bong Su, now known as Sawsum, walking through a village while leading a horse. He reviews his status window, noting that the experience gained from killing a nearby man exceeded previous gains. He concludes that stronger targets yield more experience, but confronting a true martial artist now would be fatal. He decides to seek targets between ordinary civilians and trained warriors. A group of street thugs blocks his path and mocks him. Dong Bong Su remains silent. They strike him and drag him into a narrow alley. He evaluates the situation, considering whether to kill them and dispose of the bodies, then decides against it due to risk and low reward. He endures the beating. A man named Django appears and stops the assault. The thugs show immediate fear. Django examines the horse and reveals his intention to take it as a gift for his superior. Dong Bong Su understands that the plan was to kill him and seize the horse. Django presses him for a response. Dong Bong Su speaks clearly and challenges him directly. The thugs react in shock at hearing him speak. Dong Bong Su activates his inventory. Blue light erupts in the alley, forming a vortex. One thug is caught in the surge as Dong Bong Su draws a sword from the light. The horse is pulled into the inventory. Another burst of energy spreads outward, throwing the remaining thugs back. A system window appears, confirming Dong Bong Su's level has increased from 1 to 2. A red and black aura surrounds him. The thugs panic, recognizing the threat. Some attempt to flee, while others hesitate between running and attacking. Panic spreads through the gang as they realize what stands before them. They turn and flee through the shattered alley. One thug runs in confusion, unable to understand what he encountered. He stumbles and collapses. Psalm approaches, stomps him down, grabs him by the collar, and drags him away. Later, the thug regains consciousness and finds Psalm sitting in front of him. As Psalm steps closer, the thug's fear grows. Psalm presses a knife to his throat and demands information about the man who died earlier. The thug reveals his name was Django and that he belonged to the Black Snake Society. He explains that the Black Snake Society is part of the Ebony Syndicate that controls the back alleys of Bongyang, and that Django was an executive. He also reveals the leader's name, Bangpa, and admits that Bangpa ordered Django to kill Master Sum and take the horse. Psalm processes the information and understands the structure of the Ebony Syndicate and the Black Snake Society. He demands everything the thug knows, making it clear his survival depends on it. The thug cooperates fully. Moments later, the thug lies dead. Psalm opens his inventory and removes all the bodies, leaving no trace. He remains at the scene and reviews what he learned. The Ebony Syndicate becomes a clear target. These people exist between ordinary civilians and martial artists, fitting what he's been searching for. He notices that all wounds on his body have healed completely after leveling up. Every injury is gone. He considers that even fatal damage might be recoverable under certain conditions, making calculated risk acceptable when close to leveling. He reflects on the light that appeared during the level up and recognizes it as a danger. Both the glow and the inventory-based killings risk exposure. Remaining unnoticed is essential. A hunter must appear ordinary and blend in completely. Leveling must occur only after a hunt or in isolated places. Psalm stands beside his horse and reviews the encounter. If Django had been more cautious or stronger, the outcome could have been different. Pretending to be mute is no longer enough. He decides he must grow stronger quickly without being discovered. That resolve settles firmly. A system message appears, reporting a critical error in the Murim online system. It states the game can continue, but the warning remains unresolved. Psalm notes the error appeared after reaching level 2 and concludes it is likely caused by his existence interacting with the system. He checks his status window. Attributes previously marked as question marks now appear as gauge bars. He considers that this change may be tied to the error and that not everything can be fully quantified in reality. He reviews his skills. Common passive skills such as stab, block, and throw are listed. One skill stands out. Spirit Eye. It has no description, and its function remains unclear. At that moment, the system announced that the activation conditions for Spirit Eye had been met. The skill activated automatically when an enemy with a level difference of 10 or more entered a 20-meter range. The displayed distance continued to decrease. Psalm inferred that Spirit Eye functioned as an early warning. As the distance shortened, his attention shifted toward the gate. He judged the presence unlikely to be an enemy. Few would dare enter the Danri clan, and an intruder would not move this openly. The approaching individual was likely an expert from a clan. Psalm did not yet understand what a 10-level difference truly meant. Considering the effort and risk required just to reach level 2, the gap had to be significant. Reaching level 10 through ordinary people alone would require thousands, possibly tens of thousands, of deaths. That difference represented the weight of many lives. Someone of that level within the Danri clan was approaching. The door opened. A man entered, placed a hand on Psalm's shoulder, and asked whether he was the one who killed Mel. Psalm froze. Internal energy flowed from the man's hand into Psalm's body, circulating through him and inspecting him completely. When the inspection ended, the man withdrew his hand and left with his subordinates. Psalm remained silent. Outside, a subordinate asked why the man had left without interrogating the boy and whether he had been suspicious. The man confirmed his suspicion and explained that he had already checked by injecting internal energy. If Psalm had practiced martial arts, traces would have remained. There were none. Psalm was an ordinary person with no internal energy. As they walked away, the man considered whether the deaths were truly suicides. If it was a plague, he wondered how many more would die before it ended. On a night lit by an eerie moon, the suicide plague in Bayong abruptly stopped. In its place, killings began to spread through the city. Heavy rain followed. Inside a bar, several people drank together. One mentioned the story of a nameless swordsman. The other acknowledged that nearly everyone had heard it. The first insisted the figure should be called the Great Nameless Swordsman and said he was hunting members of the Ebony Syndicate. The second warned him to speak quietly. The first dismissed the concern and said the White Tiger Unit and Red Wolf Sect had already been wiped out. The second replied that one group remained and warned that the Black Snake Society would not tolerate such talk. The first said their turn would come and claimed the Nameless Swordsman would destroy them as well. Nearby, another man listened without reacting. He finished his drink, stood up, and left the bar in silence. The scene shifts outside the Black Crow Squad mansion. A security guard is asleep at the gate. His companion arrives and slaps him awake. The guard apologizes. His companion scolds him, warning him about the chaos caused by the Nameless Righteous Swordsman, stating that 3 black units have already been wiped out and that only the Black Society remains. He realizes the guard is falling asleep again. Before he can finish, the protagonist appears and cuts off the sleeping guard's head. The companion turns, freezes in fear, and begins to speak, but the protagonist strikes first and kills him in a single blow. The protagonist enters the mansion. Numerous arrows are fired at him by the soldiers. He narrowly dodges them and faces the soldiers. One soldier addresses him, stating he knew the Nameless One would come. The protagonist draws his sword. Thunder rumbles overhead. The commander orders the soldiers to kill him. The soldiers charge together. The protagonist cuts them down with his sword without pause. As the soldiers fall, fear spreads. The commander orders the remaining troops to move and advances himself, declaring he will kill the protagonist personally. The protagonist advances and kills the commander along with the soldiers around him. One soldier curses as he approaches, claiming he has caught the protagonist. The protagonist cuts him down as well. Another soldier rushes toward the protagonist and shouts for him to surrender. The protagonist commands the system. Inventory. A knife appears behind the soldier. He freezes in shock and questions how it appeared. Another soldier closes the distance and strikes the protagonist directly. After landing the hit, he laughs, claiming he finally succeeded and mocking the protagonist as nothing more than a human who can be killed. The protagonist drops to one knee and pulls the blade from his chest. The remaining soldiers hesitate, noticing his expression and questioning why he is smiling. The protagonist moves and cuts down the remaining soldiers. Elsewhere in the mansion, the squad leader's companion notices the sudden silence. He mutters that the screams have nearly stopped and questions whether one man is truly killing everyone. He recalls their past crimes and realizes that strength, not morality, determines survival. Sweating, he decides to act. He moves toward a hidden passage that leads to Paradise Manor, the leader's estate, and resolves to fight in the darkness. He orders his soldiers to fire. Arrows rain down, and several strike the protagonist. The companion hesitates, questioning whether the protagonist is dead. Before he can finish, the protagonist appears and kills one soldier instantly. The remaining soldiers are cut down just as quickly. Terrified, the companion calls out, asking if anyone is still alive. He draws his sword and confronts the protagonist, asking if he is the Nameless Righteous Swordsman and demanding to know what they did to deserve this. As the protagonist approaches, the man protests, claiming he is not the Grim Reaper and questioning his right to judge them. The protagonist cuts off his head before he can finish. Holding his sword steady, the protagonist states that he wants only one thing: their lives. He moves forward and declares that the only one left now is the Black Society leader, Bang Poyam. While moving forward, the protagonist reflects. First was the White Tiger Unit. After leveling up by killing Django, he was still weaker than most members of the Black faction. He relied on luring, ambushing, and arson to begin his hunt. By the time the White Tiger Unit leader became alert, more than half of the unit had already been killed. During that period, officials and townspeople gave his actions a name: the Nameless Righteous Swordsman. After adopting this identity, eliminating members of the unorthodox faction became easier. When he killed the White Tiger Unit leader, he reached level 5 and obtained his first active skill, Qinggong, a body lightning technique, along with the 3 Forces sword art. With these, he could confront Black faction members directly. Around the time children began playing games imitating the Nameless Righteous Swordsman, the Red Wolf Gate was wiped out. The only unorthodox faction remaining in Banyang was the Black Society. The scene shifts to the residence of the Black Society leader. Outside the house, Black Society leader Bang Poyam sits on the floor. The protagonist appears before him. After observing him, Bang Poyam speaks, asking if he is the nameless righteous swordsman. The protagonist remains silent. Bang Poyam comments that if he were truly a swordsman of justice, he would not be so tightly wrapped. The protagonist replies that he is not one. Bang Poyam asks why he hunts and kills the unorthodox faction if that is the case. The protagonist answers that he is not a righteous swordsman. Bang Poyam laughs and says that he has deceived everyone. The protagonist steps closer and states that he deceived no one, and that people only believed what they wanted to believe. As Bang Poyam reaches for his sword, he remarks that the protagonist is interesting. Drawing his weapon, Bang Poyam says that even if he must cross the river of the dead today, he will have no regrets. Laughing, he charges and declares that regardless of titles, the protagonist came to kill him, and demands to see what he has. Both advance toward each other. Bang Poyam lands a direct strike on the protagonist. The protagonist counterattacks, but the strike is blocked. He attacks again, and Bang Poyam blocks and counters. As they exchange blows, Bang Poyam notices an opening and judges that it is too short and will not reach. The leader of the Black Society strikes again, hitting the protagonist directly and sending him flying backward. Before the protagonist can recover, the leader advances with a grin and speaks, noting that the protagonist's body is not in perfect condition. The leader attacks again. This time, the protagonist blocks. Another strike follows, and the protagonist blocks once more while realizing that the leader is deliberately targeting his injuries. He understands that continuing like this will lead to defeat, even if it requires sacrificing his body. As the exchange continues, the leader questions what the protagonist is thinking in the middle of the fight. The protagonist blocks another strike and loudly commands the activation of the Three Forces sword art. Before the skill can activate, the leader binds him with a rope-like sword and declares that he has caught him. The protagonist reacts in shock, realizing it is a whip sword. He struggles but cannot free himself. Observing him, the leader remarks that the technique was effective and notes that this is his first encounter with a whip. Before the leader can act further, the protagonist breaks free, reversing the momentum and sending the leader flying backward. The protagonist stands calmly and watches from a distance. Before he can recover fully, a large glowing snake-shaped construct appears in front of him. The protagonist reacts to its sudden manifestation. The leader rises and comments that the protagonist willingly used his own body as bait, stating that such behavior is not the way of a martial artist. As he advances, he calls it the way of an assassin or a hunter. Revealing his snake-like form, the leader explains that in a life-or-death duel, the one who hides more gains the advantage. He tears apart his clothing and declares that he had more hidden while the protagonist had less, calling a fatal flaw. The protagonist stands firmly, sword in hand. Advancing, the leader states that the protagonist has no moves left and orders him to die, calling him the nameless murderous demon. As he speaks, the glowing snake-shaped structure advances toward the protagonist with its jaws wide open.